Today, we're joined by Addie. Now you're, managing over 500,000 followers.
I manage a network of 3 million followers on Instagram. I've helped clients get 60 million views by mass distributing content.
What would you do today if you wanted to get an account several 100,000 followers?
The same strategy I used early on with the main account, I still use to this day, and it's super interesting.
What's kind of the best ways to monetize under this strategy?
8 years of running that main account, I probably brought in over 6 figures of just experiences and merchandise. You'll sit there and you'll think, wait, what? You did that?
I'm just curious how you navigate all that. How are you organizing and coming up with and producing all this content?
One of the number one things before you even start posting any content.
All right, welcome back to the Niche Pursuits podcast. My name is Jared Bauman. Today, we're joined by Addie. Ben, welcome on board.
Thank you, Jared. Well, I'm happy to be here. Long-time listener.
It's always great when we have someone who's familiar with the podcast. Sounds like you've listened to a few of the episodes. I kind of joke. You said you listened to a lot of them. And yeah, it's great. It's great to have someone who's familiar with kind of how we do it around here. So it's I'm excited about this interview today too, because we're talking about a variety of topics. We're talking about, newsletters. We'll talk about some Facebook pages. We'll talk about Instagram, social media. There's so many topics on the agenda, but I think really from a high level, we're really talking about your journey, your story in the online world, and how all the different facets that it's had for it. So it's going to be fun, and we'll touch on a lot of different things that you've done successfully. So before we get into all the details, though, give us a little backstory. Tell us about your history, maybe leading up to your online entrepreneurship.
Sure. So a little about me. For the bulk of my life, I've always been a builder. When I started out as a young kid, I used to build those blocks and stuff with my grandparents. And so every time I would just try to build things and do things. So fast forward, I was in college and I was in chemistry, and I didn't really like to read the books. Obviously I understood I had to study and pass the classes and all that stuff, but I needed a creative outlet. So around the time that this was happening was back, I think 2014, 2015. Mm-hmm. And when you were on Instagram, there was a bunch of theme pages, right? So there was a page that just kept coming up on my feed called Modern Outdoorsman. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's a cool concept. They're working with photographers, or they're doing other things like that. And when I was in high school, I did photography, I did digital photography, film, all that stuff. So I was like, okay, so I'm in school, I need a creative outlet. Why don't I just spin up my own travel page? Let's do, some sort of name that's similar to Modern Outdoorsman. And let's try to figure out a way that I can share my own adventures or share my own travels or my own photos, while also providing value to other people. So I started a page. I just really try to tap into lifestyle and calls to action behind the brand behind it. And then eventually I spent probably 3 months just trying to understand how to grow this thing. And this kind of goes into something that we can talk about later, but I grew that page to about 10,000 followers within, I think it was 6 months. And then I was like, okay, I got a K behind the number. I thought that was a really cool accomplishment. And then I was like, okay, now there's a period, and I want to get rid of that. So I want to get to 100. So then it's just all numbers and a letter. And I just thought that was such a cool concept, or a flex to people while I was in school. So I did a lot of that. I've been building all those things, did a ton of partnerships and collaborations and things. And then eventually I got to a point where I manage a network of 3 million followers on Instagram. I have my own personal audience is 530,000. And yeah, we've had a lot of fun. I manage the 530 is roughly 30 accounts, roughly, give or take. And then started to get into local newsletters now. So there's kind of a smorgasbord of things that I've done and I've experience with. So I'm happy to dive in today.
I feel like you're a classic online entrepreneur. I mean, just hearing you talk about, I started my first business in college too. And just hearing you share oh, we got a K next to something. This is awesome. We should just try to get rid of the period. That's totally the stuff I was using to motivate myself, that kind of stuff too. Yep. So that's awesome. I mean, it's pretty remarkable. You kind of have this story where you're like, oh, I just kind of started this social media account in college. Now you're, managing over 500,000 followers across 30 accounts. Like, maybe explain that a little bit more, break it down a little bit more for people in terms of what you mean by 30 different platforms or different specific accounts, so people can kind of understand what that looks like.
Sure. So it started out with just the main account, and had that for since 2015. So that's like just under 10 years now. I started like in the summer. So we're coming up on the 10-year anniversary, which is cool. When I was doing all this, I just had the one account. I got the success. And so there's like this inflection point when, with social media specifically. So like context, there was like the 6 months it took me to get to 10,000, then to get to 10 to 100,000, it took me roughly another 6 to 12 months or so to get from 100,000 to 500,000. And if you go to look at the page, it's actually 497 now because Instagram like removes dead audience or like active or inactive accounts or whatever. So it fluctuates, but to go from 100 to the 500 range was a super interesting process of just trial of content. But in order to manage all these accounts, there's like a multitude of things that had to happen. So one, I had to hire a VA. I've had a VA since 2019 who's managed and posts all of the content on the main account. And then she does about probably like 10 of the sub accounts is what I call them. And then we have another part-time person that does the other 10 or 15. And then odds and end accounts that don't really get managed often, but they kind of get posted on frequently. And so like the idea behind the sub accounts specifically, and I can kind of dive into why I have 30 accounts. So I've always understood data, right? Like my day job, I used to be a data analyst. I was a data analyst for 5 years. So diving into different data, whether it was healthcare data or just like the analytics on Instagram. And I noticed something about the main account, and like, yes, I have 500,000 followers, but the difficulty with that, or like the thing to understand is like, it's a global audience, right? It's not
Mm-hmm.
hyper focused. So like early on in my career, when I had 100,000 followers, I was able to push 20,000 people to my website, uh, within like a week because the algorithm was favored. It was a different algorithm when I did that. And I was able to sell stickers, merchandise, like anything that had my brand on it, I was able to push. And eventually it got to a point where like the algorithm changed. I lost all my traffic, just focused on that main account. And I was like, well, how do I kind of like funnel it, right? I don't want to have this global audience because I can't really do much with it, but how do I funnel it? And so you can understand like the sub accounts now are regional or like state level. So it's like California, Colorado, New York, like we manage all these different smaller accounts. And the same strategy I used early on with the main account, I still use to this day. And like, it's super interesting conversation piece that we can talk about in a little bit. But I know that it works, and it's almost like a funnel because when I look at the analytics of the smaller accounts, it's all to the hyper like local region of the sub account. And then I was like, and then this goes into the newsletter side of things. How do I then convert even more people? So I got like super hyper local. So it's just like the super interesting of like my journey as an entrepreneur, like starting out like, let's just try stuff. And then finally like refining it over time to a point where it's like, oh shit, like I can actually do cool things with this. So yeah, I have a small team, about 2 to 3 people that help me do the day-to-day operations with it. So definitely helpful.
Okay, this is fascinating. I've never heard of someone who's got very much a funnel approach, right, to a social media angle on traffic and on eyeballs. I guess, let me see. Several questions come to mind. Let me start with the bigger
Sure.
one, which is about your big account,
Mm-hmm.
the big main account. You grew that. You started
Mm-hmm.
that at a, like you mentioned, at a time period where the Instagram algorithm was very different. What would you do today if you wanted to get an account to, several 100,000 followers? And how would it be different than what you were doing back at the time?
Sure. I think this is like a very loaded question. I would do a lot of the same things I did early on, with the only difference being not afraid to spend money. Like I started all of this stuff when I was broke as a joke college student. But a lot of the things that I did early on are still applicable to like this day. So just, I guess we can kind of dive into like what were the tactics or strategies that I used. And like some of the, like the main one is like one that everyone's like, whoa, don't do that. Like that's gonna to hurt or whatever. But it's following and unfollowing. Like as odd as it is, the strategy still works. And I can say it works because of those sub accounts. We use the same strategy. I look at the demographics and I'm like, oh, the audience is the people that live in that city or in that state. And so like the one thing I will say is like early on 2018 ish, or like let's just say 0 to 10K, I just hyper focused on following and unfollowing people. At the time when I did that, they weren't as strict with like rate limits. So like I think I was able to do like close to 1,000 follows and unfollows within a day back then. Now I think it's roughly 100 to 200. You'd have to see. They have it all available online. You can find, but early on, I did a lot of follow and unfollow, and like there is value to it because like how else are you going to organically get in front of people? Yes, you can do short form content, but like, do you know how to edit short form content that goes viral? Probably not. And like, there's no issues with that, right? Like I've helped like clients get 60 million views by mass distributing content. There's nothing wrong with short form content, but if you don't know what you're doing, like there's only so much you can do, right? And so um following and unfollowing got me to that first 10,000. Once you got to 10,000 at that time, and I would argue even still, like having 10,000 followers is kind of a feat in itself. Like people still are like, oh, that's pretty cool. Um, so at the time when I hit 10,000, I really doubled down on like partnerships or collabing with other people. So getting like shout outs, like shout out for shout out or like follow for follow type stuff. To get to the 100,000, it was a mix of content, as well as just like algorithm changes, as well as um, more of like the collaborative stuff. So I did a ton of giveaways, right? I did brand giveaways, worked with, 5 or 10 people at a time. And we would just do like a $1,500 giveaway of like gear or whatever. And like, all you got to do is follow and like you get announced. So like those things still are tried and true methods to grow. In my opinion, I still leverage those on a day-to-day basis, or monthly basis at this point. But like there's some like nuances where like things have changed over time, but for the bulk of growth, like I have never seen an issue with an account where I just do some follow and follow to get that initial audience and then like doubling down on like what content works based on the data. So like did this post that has 100 likes, is this better or worse than the previous post, and like starting to pull from that because like at the same time of me building beautiful destinations was like a really big account. They're still one of the largest travel accounts, but they had a interview that they talked about the science behind the colors that they used in the imagery, and so it like kind of goes back to like our backgrounds of photography, like how do things work and like
Yep.
what looks best. And so if I took that approach early on of like getting that, and then like 2020-ish is where I saw the 150 to 300 like blow up, and it was all because of colors, content, short form video, and then kind of the rest is history. So hopefully that answers the question of like starting out.
It does.
But yeah.
It does. And you've started a lot of subsequent accounts, to be clear. So it's not like you've only started this one account. We have so many others. And you mentioned the strategy. Maybe now is a good time to talk about like the strategy, the approach, why you've landed on this as a strategy. I'd love to hear more about it because, again, I don't think a lot of people take this approach.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason I do it, there's another guy that I know who does this same strategy, but it's for college campuses. And I think there's a lot to be said about the follow and follow. And again, I can't preface this enough that you have to understand the rate limits on the platform. Like if Instagram understands or sees that you could be botting the account, you'll get terminated or you'll get suspended or you'll have issues. That's not to say that there isn't ways to get those accounts back and be able to get access to them, but if you aren't careful with it, I've just been doing this for 10 years, so I understand, like, you can't go balls to the wall and just start following a bunch of people. But I think there's something to be said because, like, from a user standpoint, from a consumer standpoint, if someone follows you, right, if you're a nobody, and I'm not in a negative connotation that, like, you're a nobody, but, like, you don't have a large audience, you don't have a personal brand, you don't have anything going on digitally, and you see an account follow you, what do? Your first response is to go look at the page.
Yep.
Okay, well, I'm going to go look at the page, and then whenever I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, this content's kind of cool. Oh, I'll follow it. So you follow it. Then, a month later, I go and I unfollow you because I don't need the followers. It's not about me, or I don't need to follow you. It's not about that. It's, I want you to follow me. So it's an organic way, quote unquote, to get people to see you, understand what you're doing, get the attention, get that awareness, and then you just kind of scale it up. And then eventually, when you get to a certain threshold, like 5,000 to 10,000 followers, and this is just from the recent, like, case study of a super local account, like, content will start to pick up on its own in the sense of, like, engagement. So you'll start to get more followers and stuff. And this kind of segues into another thing. So, like, how do you analyze all of the data for all of these accounts? Like, I think that's a big thing too, right? And I don't want to cut off questions for you, but it's just something, like, my brain kind of goes there, like, okay, cool, Ben, you have 30 accounts, but, like, how do you manage those or view all that data? So there's, like, a two-pronged approach. One is I have a dozen phones, burner phones, which is, I know, overkill, but all of those phones have the accounts logged in. So if I ever need to log into them. The other thing is we use all native meta scheduling. So I don't use Buffer. I don't use Hootsuite. I don't believe in paying the money that those guys require for something that Facebook gives you for free. And then the other thing was, I'm assuming you've probably heard of Social Blade, but Social Blade is a tool that allows you to kind of track followers and engagement over time. I was a huge proponent of using Social Blade early on. And if you've used it, you kind of understand the headache that it now is, where Facebook requires you to log in as an account to then verify the connection and stuff. And so I'm actually building a tool myself that allows me to see that tracking. And so it allows me to see at a high level, how are these accounts growing? So for instance, one of the accounts that's doing really well is a Hawaii account. I know I emailed you before setting this up. I was in Maui, and I was looking at the account while I was out there, and I grew organically from follow and unfollow. We did that to about 2,000 followers, and then we stopped. We saw that there was an issue on the account, and we're just like, hey, let's take a chill. Like, let's not do it. In between stopping and moving forward, the growth of the account was organically to, like, I think it was around 4,500 or something like that followers. And it was like, all we did was post content and, like, had a really good strategy behind it. So
it's interesting that you do this local strategy with the accounts, and you have your one large account. I guess maybe a burning question I would have is, with this really local approach and your ability to connect with people in that area and the success it's having, like, do you still need the really large account? How does that fit into the strategy with the success you're having on the smaller accounts?
Yeah. So it's kind of like it's a super interesting conversation piece. So yes, I personally believe I still need the large account. One, it's like my baby, right? It's I built this for 10 years. Like, it's its own little thing, right? But there's a strategy behind what I'm trying to accomplish where all of this stuff works together. So the first is, like, you have the large account, super high on the funnel, global audience. Then you have the sub accounts that are more regional, that are states, cities, whatever. And then you have the newsletters that are super, super hyper focused to a location.
Yep.
So how do these all work together is the question. So Instagram allows you to collaborate with up to, like, 5 or 6 accounts at once. So there's an invite collaborator feature now where you can literally post something and connect to a bunch of different accounts. So one of the things that we're doing to leverage the main accounts, like, I guess, reach, if you want to call it that, the impressions, the reach, the exposure, is we're inviting our sub accounts to be partners or like collabs on posts. So you have the main account pushing that content, then all of the awareness and all that the data behind it is shared between the two. So like when I look at the account that's smaller that got promoted, it shows, oh, in the last 30 days you had 50,000 impressions or reach, and it's all because we did collaboration posts with that the larger main account. So in essence, I'm doing a trickle down effect from main to sub to local newsletters, and then using the sub to promote the local newsletters if I want. And then once I have you on a newsletter via the methods that I have, whether it's Facebook ads or just like hyper curating to that local region, now that I have your attention as a user locally, I can then use that and push back up. So I can push you to like the main account. I could push you to the regional account. So it's like a flywheel of content that just is constantly engaging with each other, or like cross-pollination for all of the accounts.
Yeah, kind of using the best of both worlds, if you will.
Yep.
We'll get into the newsletter side of things here in a little bit. I just want to maybe ask a couple more questions here on this Instagram approach. And in terms of monetization, what's kind of the best ways to monetize under this strategy? And you had mentioned that, the large account, if I wrote in my notes correctly, kind of because of the globalization of the audience, because once you get past that 100,000, you start attracting a really wide array of people. The monetization got tricky, hence some of the reason for the sub accounts. Like, what types of monetization works in this strategy?
Yeah, so I think this opens up another can of worms of a really fascinating approach to monetization, and I think viewers or listeners will enjoy this part of the conversation, because you'll sit there and you'll think, wait, what? You did that? So starting off, the theme account, like, how do you monetize a theme account, right? Like, you have a brand that you're trying to build, but the terminology of a theme account doesn't really carry much weight, or like people don't really understand what that means. Like, how do you monetize something that's just sharing other people's content? Well, first, when I started doing this, I will say, like, if anyone wants to go down this approach and do theme accounts or to do this type of stuff, there's a lot of videos online that'll teach you or show you how to do stuff. I'm going to share my own personal like background with it. Like, one of the number one things before you even start posting any content, like, first you can post like royalty-free content. You could go to Upsplash or Pixels or wherever, and you can get content that you can post, and that's fine. If you're trying to use other people's content, you have to understand copyright laws and make sure that you have explicit written permission to repost content. That was one of my big mistakes early on, and we can talk about other mistakes and things later. But now that we have an understanding of like where you get content or what you can do with content, cool, and you want to build a theme page, the monetization is kind of the fun part, because you can kind of play around with what works and what doesn't work. It's a free platform, right? Like, if you're not paying for it, you're the product. So the platform itself is free. I built an audience for it. How am I going to monetize and convert people? 2018, that algorithm pushed people so hard based on who you followed. Now it's algorithmic of like, maybe you'll like this content.
Yep.
Back then, I could push a story and get seen. Like I said, I could push 20,000 people to a website in a week and sell out of stickers and merchandise. That's cool. That's one pillar of monetization. But what else could you do? Well, I really like to travel. Okay, well, you could work with tourism boards. I've done that. I worked with a tourism board to get my honeymoon covered to Vancouver, Canada. Worked with Four Seasons in Vancouver before they closed that facility down, and had a comp stay there where we basically got the key to the city to do it. It's a tourism card that you get when you work with the tourism board, and you can go and do like all these different excursions, and we documented the whole thing. So it was like monetization in a sense of not having to pay. It was on someone else's dime. We also then leveraged that to work with the tourism board of Hawaii. So right after our honeymoon, we went on our family vacation to Hawaii. We go to Hawaii every year. And when we did that, I had a comped airplane ticket to go to Hawaii from the East Coast. That's not cheap. And then had the ability to go and do sightseeing stuff while we're in Hawaii. And so I think it's really interesting, like when you start to think about other monetization methods, I think a lot of people will come back to, hey, I need ads or I need sponsors. And like, yes, like there is value to that. But if you're in a position like I was at the time where I didn't have a lot of money and like I wanted new stuff, but I didn't want to pay for it, like what else could you do? I worked with Swiss Army or Victorinox, and we got a bunch of gear via that partnership. One of the I was talking to my wife today about it. One of the cool claims to fame was I got to work with. I think it was Adorama back in the day. And I got a bunch of like camera equipment for free. And it was just like a mutual partnership. We had like all this stuff going out. But it's like really interesting ways of like not just focusing on I need money, but like how can I monetize this in a way that makes sense like for my life situation, and then focus on, enjoying life at the time. Now things are kind of different, right? Like I'm trying to focus more on the partnerships and brand sponsors, but at the time and like over the journey, like brand partnerships and collaborations and tourism boards and all that stuff was a unique way to do it. And it was also like fun to kind of brag to friends. It's like, oh, I'm doing this, like it's just I'm using the platform that I built to get awareness for those partners. And on the back end, instead of me getting paid monetarily all the time, I got, experiences, which I'll never forget. Like seeing, like going on my first helicopter tour and documenting that, and then getting camera equipment and waterproof housings, like all the stuff that like I never thought I could do, I was able to accomplish. And so in that first, 5-8 years of running that main account, I probably brought in over 6 figures of just experiences and merchandise, as well as like the 5 to 6 figures of like direct sales of doing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the one thing that people need to understand is like, don't limit your thoughts on how to make money, because like you can make money in a ton of different ways. It depends on like the situation.
Hey everyone, Spencer here, founder of Niche Pursuits. So you probably know the importance of building internal links so your site can perform well in Google. Today I want to share how Link Whisper can help you add outbound internal links to your articles. As you draft your article in WordPress, Link Whisper scans your site, identifying the best internal link opportunities. It then recommends the perfect anchor text and link to add. With just a click, your content is updated with new internal links. No more expensive tools or tedious manual site searches. Link Whisper does the heavy lifting right inside the WordPress editor. Say goodbye to the hassle of internal linking. With Link Whisper, you can focus on what you do best, creating great content. Use the coupon code podcast today and get $15 off. Elevate your website's internal linking with Link Whisper now. Building smart internal links just got easier. Go to linkwhisper.com today and be sure to use coupon code podcast to get $15 off.
The concept of working with brands, whether it's for free gear, whether it's for excursions and adventures, in a monetary way, where they're paying you for something, like what today are brands looking for? Would you say, like, if you are not yet to the point where you're getting brands reaching out to you, or where your reach out to brands is being responded to, like, how can people start to frame their approach to their content and to what they're sharing so that it does eventually align with what brands are looking for in today's day and age?
That's a really good question. I think, early on when I started the main account, I was what you would say like an influencer, before that was even like a term that was coined. Like I had a large audience, and like there was a certain aspect of all of the conversations that were about those vanity metrics of followers, likes, comments, all that stuff. And like, sure, there's ways to game that stuff. But I think now brands have more emphasis on like quality of the audience as well as quality of like the partnership. And I say that because like I don't put a ton of emphasis on the main account to do partnerships anymore because my focus has like pivoted to the newsletter stuff. But the opportunities still remain the same. Like when I worked with Four Seasons during COVID lockdowns, we did a staycation up in the mountains, and like the same principles of the things that brands were looking for back when I was doing this heavily in 2018, 2019 still remain the facts of what they were looking for in 2021. So and even current day, like they want from my experience, what they want is they want to have loyal audiences. They want to have legitimate like conversions or opportunities of awareness. And it's not necessarily all about like the most reach. Like you could put spend behind it, right? If you're working with a hotel chain or you're working with a tourism board, part of the payment that you could get, like I was talking to a tourism board, I think it was in Tennessee. It was either Tennessee or Ohio. And the deal that we were working on was like, blog posts. We were working on social posts, like as much awareness as that they can get via my audience. And so it's just about, from my experience, having the quality audiences that can then convert and provide the best opportunity for that top of mind brand awareness for those brands, right? Like if you're a follower of mine and you see me post something like, and this was a change that happened a couple years ago, it's like, I want to make sure whatever I promote has value and like aligns with my overall mission. Because otherwise, what's the point? Like you have a theme page and you're just showing yourself out to the lowest bidder. Like I don't want that. I want to be, providing insights that both benefit the user, the end user, like, oh, this is a beautiful destination, while also providing that impact to the brand and say, oh, like we actually converted. We had, 50,000 people that saw this for this campaign throughout this month or something. So I think it's like a delicate balance of understanding like what are your needs and what are you looking for, while also understanding like brands are looking for ways to get, I guess, cheap acquisition is what you could call it, and top of mind. Like how can you kind of go against the trend of like paid marketing? How can you incorporate that organically into your ecosystem and finding the value propositions along the way?
That's good. That's good. Let's pivot to the local newsletter approach. Now, this is kind of something that you've started recently. I'll say recently. I don't know how recently, but I know it's newer than your social accounts. Talk about the concept behind that and how it plays into the social strategy you've already been all in on for a while.
Yeah, for sure. So started doing the local newsletter stuff probably 6 months ago. It was towards the end of 2024. And, I've been doing the sub accounts for about 2 to 3 years now. And I was thinking to myself, okay, like this is great. But something I've always come back to is like never be dependent on one platform. Because like if tomorrow Instagram goes and hits my main account and it either suspends it or takes all of its reach away, like would that be the end of the world for me? And in a lot of cases, that's how most people operate, right? Like if they're putting all their eggs in that one basket. For me, I learned early on, like you're playing in their sandbox, and if they don't like you, they'll get rid of you. And so I've always looked for ways to diversify. So one of those ways was to diversify off of the main account to have those sub accounts. Well, now that I have that, I'm like, okay, well, like, how do I continue to kind of refine this and get more and more people to see what I'm doing? Um, whether that's just from posts, whether that's from like content that I produce. Part of the reason that I started to focus on like blog stuff with my main account was like from podcast listening here, right? Like there's people talking about SEO. Then I saw like Income School talking about stuff. I'm like, oh, this is sweet. Like I should do this. I have a decade old brand. Let's double down and try to do content. So, if it's awareness of content or if it's awareness of my own internal content, I wanted to find ways to like push that without being reliant on Google, without being reliant on Instagram, all that stuff. And so then I was listening to a podcast at the end of last year, and someone talked about like hyper local newsletters, and I was like, wait a second, like the light bulb went off, and I was like, oh
I've
my
already been doing
gosh.
this on social.
Yeah. And I was like, wait a second, like this is crazy. Cause like, I mean, you'll sit on TikTok or you'll sit on Instagram and you'll see like for you videos that are from local, foodies, right? Like there's like Colorado foodies, there's California foodies, there's New York foodies, where to go eat, all that stuff. And like part of it was like, okay, like that works, but like how could I do something like that? But like I own it. I don't want to be necessarily the face of everything, but how do I continue to apply what I did with socials, but like a different medium? And like newsletters themselves, like is probably one of the best mediums because like you own that audience. If
Right.
I want to promote something, like I can do that via my newsletter. I don't have to worry about, is it going to be like hit a wall on reach on Instagram organic? Like I don't have to worry about that. I can literally just create an email, put an offer in there, and send it out. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But like at least I have control. And so I was listening to that podcast. I had the light bulb go off, and I'm like, let's just try something. Let's create a couple different creatives. Let's spin up a Facebook page, and let's just see what happens. Let's set up a landing page. Let's do all that stuff. And like this is, mind you, all of this is happening at the same time of me getting experience with doing like the Facebook like campaigns and growing Facebook pages to then monetize them over time. So it's like I already had some sort of understanding of like what it takes to grow and do decent spend with Facebook. And so I was like, okay, let's do this. So I spun up my first location within, I think it was under a month, maybe within a month, we'll say 30 days, I reached 1,000 subscribers, and I was sitting there and I'm like, okay, like this is cool. Let me see like what else I can do. So I dropped the spend down on that first local newsletter. I don't know, it was probably like $5 a day or something like that. And I was like, okay, well, clearly there's an audience here. Let's double down. Like let's continue to this path of like leaving this to nurture. I threw another one of my employees on it and said like, hey, this is our content strategy behind the newsletter. Let's try to incorporate what we've been doing for years into this. And I was like, okay, while that's going on, let's come over here and spin up another newsletter. So at this point, I just spun up my third newsletter literally 2 days ago. But I have 3 local newsletters, all representing different cities within my state, that then through that provides an opportunity for me to sell partnerships or sponsorships via ads within the email. It allows me to include links, whether it's to owned media, like the main brand's travel stuff, or the newsletter business. If I want to do blogs there, I can host it in that to get awareness. And then the other thing that kind of all plays into this bigger ecosystem of like the travel and all this stuff is I've always wanted to, I said this early in the podcast, I've always loved being a builder. And there's always something that's been scratching at me to start other businesses. So like coffee companies, apparel companies, all that stuff. Well, like now I have the distribution methods from all of my socials, as well as all of my emails. And now if I want to do an in-house brand, I can take that and just inject it for free within all of that. And now I don't have to worry about chasing down a couple $100 or a couple $1,000 for a sponsor, and knowing like clients sometimes have that back and forth of like, oh, it didn't work the way I wanted it to, or it didn't do this or that, and the whole politics behind it. Like now I just own it and I can do whatever I want. So I think like there's a value along this journey of understanding like providing value to a brand via however you see fit, whether it's promotions on social, through emails, all that stuff, to now being in a position of like, I'm focused on these local newsletters, providing value to the local people. I mean, I get responses on polls or emails that just say like, I look forward to reading your newsletters. And I was like, well, I'm doing something, I guess. like I'm providing some sort of value, more so than previously, and building that trust. And like when it really comes down to it, you just need that 1,000 loyal fans. And like, once you have that, you can really accomplish anything in life, I feel. And so it kind of just all culminates around like newsletters are like, I think what I've always been pursuing, but I never understood like how to really capture people to sign up. And I've tried to get people to sign up with the main brands, like the main travel brands messaging and all that, and just never really converted. What converted the best for me thus far is just like hyper local and just like going for one location, providing as much value to those people. And then it's kind of like the Gary V, right? Punch punch, or give take.
Yep.
Like, give as much as you can over time, and eventually, whenever you're ready to, take some of that back, whether it's brand partners or whether it's internal brands, and collecting on that on the back end.
I mean, a burning question I have, and I got to wonder how many people are thinking it. You have this large Instagram account. You've got 30 or so sub accounts. Now you're getting into the newsletter space, which involves putting together content for people via email. Where are you, like, how are you organizing and coming up with and producing all this content, whether it's image, video, multimedia on the social media side, whether it's written, combination of that for the newsletter? Like, that's a lot of content. That's a lot at scale. You got a small team. I'm just like curious how you navigate all that.
Yeah, so like for the content side of things, like I mentioned, like copyright is a big thing that often is never talked about whenever it comes to specifically social media growth. Like, a lot of people, like, I always see videos on YouTube that are like, oh, you could grow this many followers. All you have to do is share someone else's content. And like, it's like a gray area of like, what does crediting someone look like? And over time, like, I've gotten hit left and right from copyright claims where I had to pay someone because I used it without their permission, even though it was a misunderstanding. I had their permission to do it. So it's like a very fine line between using someone else's content while also using their content, but like not making money off of it, is like the interesting delineation there. And so for me, with the content side of things, I started out curating this main account by myself. So I became a master curator, if you want to call it that, like seeing what does well, finding other people like that do well, bringing them into my ecosystem and saying, hey, I just want to share your content. Like, are you cool with that? And if they are, great. Then we bring them into the ecosystem and we just give them, like, if anything, the main account, going back to that, is like the distribution and the opportunity to, like, the billboard for other people. So if you're a small photographer, but you take exceptional content, photos, videos, whatever, I want to feature you. I want you to get the credit. Like, I'm just using it to get you exposure. I credit you in the photos, in the captions. I tag you in the photo. I even invite you as a collaborator. So everything I do via these accounts is to give value back to those people, because ultimately, as you do that, more value comes back to you and you become, you grow over time. And again, I don't monetize the main account like I used to when I would do my own things, because I had the audience. I never use people's content to make money. I want to make sure, like, people also understand that I don't do that. What I do is I leverage that to then build the vehicle, and then I allow that vehicle to, like, inject 20% of my own stuff that resonates with those people, and then those can be opportunities there. And so we have spreadsheets that have content creators for the curation side of things. When it comes to the newsletter stuff, it's a little bit of a different beast, because there's not really an all-in-one place for, say, events or,
Right.
new restaurants or new businesses. Like, all of those different things are like scattered across the internet. And so what we've really done, I would say, to an exceptional level, is understanding where that information lives and then extracting that and then providing it as value via the newsletter. So, like, you could see a post on Instagram or Facebook for an event, and you might not be in that group. But like, now that you're in my newsletter, because we know where all of that lives, we are able to extract it and put it in there. So it's a lot of high level curation that started from just like personal relationships with people that then expanded to like, oh, now we live in a digital space where Reddit, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all these different platforms have all this stuff. But how do we curate from that or aggregate it? And so I think we found our fine process or smooth process to be able to provide that value to people.
So you've got 3 newsletters off the ground. Are you going to go for all 30?
So I think the other thing to understand is like the 30 accounts are, if you want to look at it from the standpoint of they represent 30 states, right? So Colorado, California, Washington, New York, all that. The hyperlocal newsletters represent specific cities within those.
Right.
So it could be San Diego. It could be, San Francisco. It could be Miami. Like it's a finer list. And so to answer your question, my goal is to represent 10% of my given state. And that's like a big, audacious goal. But I feel like it's doable because I have scale in mind. Like, how else am I able to manage 30 plus accounts? How else am I able to manage all of these different assets, all that stuff? So I have systems, and like as we've brought on the 3rd newsletter, we're applying the same systems that we had with the first 2, with some fine tuning of like the engagement side of things. Because like it's one thing to have people to subscribe to you, it's another for them to open your emails and then also to engage with your emails. And so like early on, the first newsletter, like we had good open rates. I mean, on average, my newsletters are like 65% open rates. Click-through rates are roughly, I think on average, like around 5%. But when I first started out, it wasn't that. And I had to understand like what the users wanted from asking them questions, requesting like call to actions to get feedback. And eventually it all turned around. And so we're taking the same approach that we had with the first 2, applying it to the 3rd with the intention of having those people like hyper engaged from the jump. And then ultimately just like repeating that cycle until I represent 10% of the state that I live in. And then my goal is to go to other cities and states. I mean, I travel to California all the time, so I might start doing California. I go to Pennsylvania to visit family. I might do Pennsylvania. Like, I want to make sure that whatever I do is locations that I'm used to, because I think there's a new segment of newsletters that are coming that are mostly like newsletter as a service, which is fine. I totally understand it. But like if you're not accustomed to like things that are going on in the local geos that you're at, it's very difficult to make that authentic connection. And so like that's why I want to focus on places that I frequent. And then like if I want to scale beyond that, because I have the mindset to scale, like just finding either good people to represent the brand or just start to visit those places more to get an understanding and incorporate that into our process.
One more question for me. You growing these newsletters, getting the subscribers. You mentioned Facebook. Maybe explain your strategy, like what's working well in terms of the growth mechanisms for these newsletters.
Yeah, so I found something super interesting. I tweeted about it on my account recently. So I like, because I'm not against testing things, trying things, building things. I took a different approach to the newsletter space. So a lot of people are focused on using like Beehive or other platforms like Beehive to send your emails or like attract people to your landing page to then like have them subscribe. I started out with Beehive, and there's like a bunch of things that like come to mind whenever I think about like customizations and just like awareness. Like I used to self-host emails, so I understand like the tech side of things. But whenever I had people come to my newsletter site, like I couldn't control the user journey. Like you come to my landing page from an ad you saw from different creatives I've tested, and like, did you convert or not? And I noticed like early on that the first test that I did from Facebook ads, I was getting a CAC of like over $1. And like coming from the stance of like building a Facebook page where it's like 3 cents for a like, I'm like, oh my gosh, like
not gonna work.
$1? No, this is not good. And so I was like, okay, let's start to look at the landing page. And so I took like a CRO approach of like understanding like what is being shown here and how are people like interpreting this, right? So first thing I noticed, you land on my landing page on Beehive, there's a button and it says let me read first. So what are you going to do? Decision paralysis. You can enter your email, or you could see what's going on and say, oh, maybe I want to check this before I engage on it. And so I immediately removed that, and I saw my CAC drop by like 50%. So I was sitting around like 70 cents per sub. And I'm like, okay, now we're cooking. Like now we've understood that psychology really plays into how the user experience is with newsletters. And so I was like, okay, well, let's take this a step further and let's have like a brand behind it. So I love building brands. My travel brand is one. My newsletter one is another. So I started out with like a newsletter account that had the word buzz in it because I was like, oh, this location buzz sounds cool. But then I realized I joined a group. There's a ton of people in the group, as well as on X or on Twitter, that have buzz in their name for their newsletter. I'm like, okay, so if I scale into another part of my market, or if I go into California or another state, and there's someone that has buzz in the name, I can't have buzz and buzz like head to head. Like they're going to get the attention because they're the ones that have been there.
Yep.
And so I ended up just kind of focusing on how can I make this one more customized, and two, how can I set this up so it's its own asset. So I have the main Instagram account, I have the sub accounts, those are all part of one brand. The newsletters themselves are their own brand asset, but they all integrate together of like flowing and content wise, right? Because I own all of it, I can kind of throw it all together. So the local newsletters now are their own entity. I spun up a custom website and have all of the backend fulfilled via the email provider. Now, when you come to my landing page, I can hyper focus on like what you're experiencing as a user. So like you come to my page, and originally, and this is another example of like, keep it simple, stupid, like had the website, had the nav bar, had a back button, had subscribe, features, testimonials from people previously, another call to action at the bottom. I'm like, oh, this is for sure going to land people. What happened? Same instance that happened the first time go around where decision paralysis happened. Okay, let's remove the nav, the footer, let's remove the back button. Let's just have the hero, features, call to action.
Yep.
Okay, well, like it dropped 30% on CAC, but now I'm starting to see that kind of go back up because people are spending more time on the page looking at, oh, do I really want this? So just last week, I removed everything. So when you go to my site, because I custom built it to identify if it's an ad click or not. Now, if you come from an ad, all you see is the hero section that just says subscribe. You can't go back. You can't click on anything else. It's just that. And since then, CAC is back to, on average, like 65, 70 cents. But some of the best campaigns I have, I was just looking at it before we got on the call, I'm sitting at like 20, 30 cents per subscriber from that specific change of like keeping it simple and just refining that. And then once you subscribe, now what? Now I can push you to my own custom thank you page, where on that thank you page, I can either promote a product that I have. A lot of people do discount cards. There's people that do like custom games. There's all these different things. There's, you could have a partner with like an internet provider, and you could have that baked into there. But like, I want to own your journey. I want you to come to my site, subscribe. You go to my thank you page, and then I can put whatever I want, whatever offer, whatever conversion I want in there on that thank you page, because you're already there. Might as well use that free traffic. And then also leverage, internal directories and blogs on that custom site that all tie this all together. So like I'm tapping into organic if possible. Like if we write blog posts or we have a directory, potentially getting that awareness for free to bring people to the website to then convert. We have customizations with the subscribe features within blog posts. So like as you're scrolling, you can subscribe, and it is a custom block that connects to the functions on the website. Like it's just, I put so much emphasis on that flow and understanding like people, like what do I want that journey to be, and how do I want it to be super refined.
A lot going into this. You clearly have an eye for detail. A lot going on here. This has been really fascinating to hear you talk through. I mean, it's been a long journey, but at the same time, you're so engaged with it and so active in it, and continuing to kind of add layers to the whole puzzle, I suppose, if you will.
Yeah.
So, hey Ben, where can people follow along with what you're doing? I know you and I connected initially on Twitter, but like, what are the best places for people to get in touch if they want, but follow along with what you're doing?
Yeah, I would just say the Twitter account Niche Sites Ben. I originally created that just to track all of the niche sites I wanted to do after the podcast listening over time. It's kind of evolved to like niche sites, local newsletters, all that stuff. DMs are always open, happy to talk to anyone, and constantly sharing like updates with different strategies or things that I see. So yeah.
Ben, thanks for coming on board. Great to have a listener join us. Super fun to hear your story. And I feel like a check-in is in store in a year or two, so we can hear how these like newsletters have scaled into being this part of your overall ecosphere. So anyways,
for sure.
Thank you for sharing everything. Really appreciate it. Until we talk again.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jared.
You got it. Talk soon. Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye.